In this country, there was something called the gin craze. It started in the late 17th century and went for about 150 years in Britain, where gin was encouraged. The person who introduced gin into this country was a Dutch prince called William of Orange. The national drink of his part of the world was a drink called Genever, which is spelled Genever, which is where the word gin comes from. And it's a distilled spirit with juniper as its main ingredient. But that became really popular in Britain, gin as it became known as. And it could be made anywhere. Like you just had to buy a really cheap license and anybody could make gin. And it was a terrible scourge on society because gin was really cheap and it was really poor quality. The distilling technology wasn't very high quality. Also, the strength of the gin was really high in alcohol. So you're talking 60, 80%.
Wow.
Nowadays, it's 38 or 40%. And poor quality, really high alcohol. And so people who were in a lower class, gin was the drink of the lower class, by the way. Which is ironic because nowadays it's the other way. It tends to be more of a like, oh, I'm drinking gin and tonic, and it has a more high status reputation. But it got you where you wanted to go quickly. Gin did. If it was 60 and 80 more percent alcohol, and where you wanted to go was to be completely out of it. You wanted to be intoxicated because you lived a horrible life. You lived in a slum. You terrible lifestyle, or because you were poor. And so gin was a really cheap escape. And so this terrible scourge on society destroyed the underclass for 150 years or so. Eventually it petered out after lots of government intervention trying to ban gin or trying to price it out of the market. It was just very, very tricky.
What other crazes have there been for certain drinks in history, if any, that you're aware of?
Gin would probably be the main thing, actually, in terms of its impact on society. I'd say that was, if you were saying, a craze and something that had a really massive impact on society outside of it just being something that you got intoxicated by, it had such a knock-on effect, the gin did. So that was major.
Yeah.
It was mostly in cities, by the way. So it wouldn't have been in villages or the rural parts of the country. It was in cities, industrial cities or port cities, London, Liverpool, Portsmouth, places where there was a big underclass of people, there were slums, and there was lots of poverty and access to gin as well.
So you said that spirits had kind of like a dual purpose in the sense that they were also used for medicinal purposes. What was the origin use of beer? Was it just to get drunk? We spoke about kind of sanitation, but I'm just wondering if beer or wine also had any other uses.
Beer goes back thousands of years, by the way. So thousands and thousands of years ago, it evolved by accident. Historians believe that the grains that make the beer in warm weather, and I'm now talking about the Middle East, what we now call the Middle East, this is where it would have happened. That part of the world is called the Fertile Crescent. It's also where agriculture started as well. The grain that was being grown might have germinated in warm weather. And by germinating, the starch in the seeds is converted to sugars. And wild yeast in the air can convert those sugars and eat them and convert them to alcohol. So somehow, just by trial and error, and nobody knows where or who or when, it would have been discovered that a liquid with this cereal in it, germinated cereal, gave you this gentle buzz. Now that grain was food, by the way. So your food was magically, supernaturally giving you this this buzz. And so when humans worked out what was happening and how to do that, they could replicate it and start making it at home. So that's what they did. And it was a lovely side effect that they got a little intoxicated by it. Now, the conversion of food to something intoxicating was considered to be supernatural. And so it was connected to the deities. And in those days, there were pagan deities. And so you would worship your deity by drinking this magical libation. And there was no shame in getting drunk. In fact, it was encouraged. It was a way of worshipping your deity, to be drunk and go to big festivals and have a right hootenanny, get really and enjoy yourself. So that was beer. Also, beer is water. So again, it's food. Wine was always a more high status thing, and it was drunk to intoxicate people for sure, but it was drunk in a different way. So it was drunk by people with money or status, and they might drink it as they were doing governmental things. For instance, Persians, they would get drunk and they'd talk about whatever the government was going to do or the rulers were going to do, the king or whoever the rulers were. And they'd come up with these ideas. And then the next day they would discuss those ideas when they were sober. And if they still had the same opinion about the idea, then it would go into law, or it would be adopted as a regulation. With alcohol, there was different use for it, not just, it's delicious, it tastes great, but it could be part of statecraft. Also, because alcohol bonds us, we become very friendly when we drink alcohol and get slightly intoxicated. So alcohol has always been a way of bonding people, which was really good for tribes that might be enemies or warring against each other. If you sit down and have a drink with an enemy, you often become friends, or you start talking at least and maybe discuss things. So it was used for worshipping your deity, for statecraft, for bonding with people, for making communities together. Same now, you go to the pub here in a village, and if you've just moved into that village, you don't know anybody. So you go to the pub, you have a drink, you get to know people, you get chatting, because over a little drinky, but you can still do this with non-alcohol versions of drinks as well. In that social situation, you start making friends with people and you do build some friendships. So throughout history, alcohol has had this purpose that's more than just a recreational drink. It's had a practical purpose as well. Plus, it's been medicine as well.
Do you know the reasons?
Yes, it's because the alcohol changes our brain chemistry and it gives us endorphins. It stimulates an area in the brain, the pleasure part of the brain. And it also loosens us up and it makes us less inhibited and it makes us happy in moderation. Now, if you have too much of it, it has the opposite effect. In moderation, you get happy, you get friendly, and you want to chat with people. And it's all to do with this reward part of your brain. There's a theory that humans are hardwired to seek intoxication, by the way, that it's a human drive to be seeking intoxication. Now, that intoxication doesn't have to be just alcohol. It can be caffeine, it can be love, sex, religion, dancing, singing, playing an instrument, that sort of thing. You can become intoxicated. Drugs, intoxicating drugs, magic mushrooms, things like that. You have an altered state, basically. And some anthropologists reckon that humans are hardwired for it, which is why banning alcoholic drinks or drugs, in fact, don't work. It's like if you tried to ban sex, it wouldn't work. Humans will seek out ways to lose themselves in whatever way they choose.
Why do we do that? Why do we have such a kind of attraction to altering our state of mind? Is it because we're just naturally self-conscious?
I think it could be because it gives us pleasure. We get pleasure. It's about this reward part of the brain. When we sing together, we come together in unity, and it's really good. It makes us feel happy. It gives us endorphins. So it's all about brain chemistry. Sex makes us feel really good. It's all about reward and the OxyContin. No, hang on. I always get mixed up. There's oxytocin. Anyway.
Oxytocin, I think it is, the love hormone.
Yes, because OxyContin is that horrible opioid, isn't it?
Yes.
So, yeah, love hormones and things like that. It makes us feel really, really good. And so we want to do it again.
Do you think it's also maybe peace from mind, in the sense that not just alcohol, but like you said, singing, you're not really thinking about yourself. You're kind of thinking about the situation you're in. You're thinking about what you're doing. You're thinking about other people. Do you think a reason why we love things like alcohol and chase pleasure is to just kind of have that peace from our own minds?
It could be. I think people might not be aware that that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it could be a benefit or a side effect.